story time of how I found out my mother passed away when I was 14. Honestly, I never thought that I would be in a place where I would feel okay to talk about this. Honestly, this was low-key very hard for me to record because I feel myself already getting emotional. But it's time that I talk about it in a way to help myself kind of cope or grieve or whatever, because I feel like a lot of people, like Black families in general, they don't really talk about death. It's one thing knowing that someone close to you passes away, but it's another thing to actually sit down as a family and talk about it. And I feel like had my family done that, we all would have been in a better head shape. We all would have been better mentally, physically, emotionally. I was 14 years old. Me and my mom, close, literally close. Honestly, still remember our last moments together as if it was like yesterday. Just a little background, my mother had pulmonary hypertension. For those of you that don't know what that is, basically it means that she had trouble breathing, so she had to be on oxygen. And for the longest time, for as long as I can remember, she was always on oxygen. She was always sick. Because of that, that prevented her from flying on planes because of the oxygen levels there. That was the year that me, my dad, and my siblings were actually supposed to go to Freetown, Sierra Leone in West Africa. And I remember the last encounter we had. We had just dropped her off at the train station because she was going to go to Maryland to stay with my aunt while we were overseas. And I remember telling her, text me when you get there and let me know when you reach and be safe and all of that stuff. So a couple of days passed by. We're like texting on the phone or whatever. And I remember like my dad telling us that she was in the hospital. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at first I didn't think too much of it because she was always in and out of the hospital, whether it was for like routine checkups or whatever. So I kind of like brushed it off. I would text her, I would make sure she was okay, but I didn't think it was anything serious at that moment. It wasn't until my dad told us that he was going to be flying up there. And then that's when I realized if he's flying up there, then it must be serious. But again, I just kind of like shook my head, brushed it off. I figured that's his wife. He just wants to make sure she's okay or whatever. Fast forward a few days later. This was June 20th, 2011. Around 12:30 p.m., me and my brothers were out in the living room. The previous night, we were watching a movie, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the phone rings. Like, we all fell asleep in the living room, and then the phone rings at 12:30. I go and I answer it, and it's my dad. And he says, Inna lillahi wa inna. And as Muslims, when someone passes away, that's what we say. We belong to God, and to him we shall return. And at that moment, like, I kind of just like blanked out. I'm like, why is he telling me this? Like, why is he saying this? And then out of like, next he was like, your mom passed away, you know, this afternoon, like this afternoon, blah blah blah, early in the morning or whatever. I don't remember exactly what time, but he said that. I remember holding the phone, and out of nowhere, like, my mind just goes black. Like, I just dropped the phone on the floor. I tell my brothers, who were 12 and 7 at the time, and I just, like, at this point, I'm just in shock. I'm going through the 7 stages of grief. First, I'm in denial. I go and I remember sitting outside, and it was very hot that day, and I'm just like sitting in the driveway, and just like I'm numb. Some of my sister's friends pull up and they have to literally like help me to get back inside the house. And I'm not gonna lie, like from that moment, my life has never been the same. We all know that we're going to die. We all know that we're going to pass away. Like, no one lives forever. And until that moment, I have never experienced a death so close to me. Like, I had, like, my grandparents pass away, and I remember my mom being very sad at the time, but I didn't really grow up with them. So, like, all I remember was just, and I was young, you know? All I remember was how sad they were, how sad my mom was and stuff. And it's truly the first time I have ever experienced death so close to me. Like, it was just something that I have never felt. I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know how to express myself. It was just like, I don't even have the words up until now, and I'm 27, you know, and I still don't know how to express the feelings that I felt that day. I just know that I feel them still. And for the longest time, like, I would literally cry whenever I would hear the word mom, whenever anyone would talk about their mothers. Like, for the longest time, like, I couldn't even talk about my mom, because like every single time I would just like burst out into tears. So fast forward a couple of days later, my dad and my aunt come back, and then we planned the funeral, and it was a Friday, and there was a lot of people at the mosque, which is a good sign. And before they took the coffin, the person there asked me if I wanted to see her, and I couldn't even bring myself to say yes. And you know, like a few years later, like I looked back at it and said, maybe I should have seen her, but it wasn't written for me to see her like that. And I'm glad it wasn't, because I did not want our last moments to be me looking at her lifeless body. You know what I'm saying? So they're dragging the coffin to the mosque, and I'm literally like holding onto the coffin, like I would not let go. And my aunt had to like kind of like take me away. And after that, I didn't even go to the burial, because it was just so painful for me. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of just like stayed behind and stuff. And this was like during the summertime, and I was like going into 9th grade, and like those high school moments are so critical for you to have your mom, and I didn't have that. You know what I mean? And I felt like after my mom passed away, like my family literally broke. Like, we have never been the same again, and I don't ever think that we will be the same again. Like, things like that just really puts you in perspective, because it's my mom never got to see me graduate high school. She never saw me get married. She never saw my kids, you know. And like, even like sometimes like I wish like I had her. I'm sorry. Sometimes like I wish I had her, because it's like, that's my mom, you know what I mean? And like having to like grow up without a mother, like it has just been so hard, you know. Like, I lost my way. My faith wasn't strong enough at the time, and I kind of just like lost my way, you know what I'm saying, because of the pain that I was feeling, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I like lashed out, I changed, I just became a different person. You know what I mean? And it was only by God's grace that he brought me back to the straight path. And I'm grateful, because I don't know where I would have been if he had not brought me back, you know? It's like, at the end of the day, like anyone going through pain, the pain of losing someone so dear to you, like, talk about it. Because take it from me, not talking about it will do more harm than good. It will literally mess up your mind. It will mess up your health, your emotional stability. Like, it will literally mess up everything, keeping everything bottled up inside. Everything happens for a reason, you know. And I'm happy knowing that, you know, she's in peace and she's not suffering anymore and she's not sick anymore, you know. And I believe one day I will see her again. You know what I mean? But that does not mean that I still won't be feeling the pain I'm feeling inside. Some days are better than others. I remember like her first birthday without her, it was in November. She passed in June. So November 8th. That day, like I broke down, you know, and I was just like crying and crying and crying. No one prepares you for losing a parent. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how old you get, like your mother is your mother. It doesn't matter if you're 90, it doesn't matter if you're 70, 12, if you're 5. Like, at the end of the day, no matter how old you are, the pain of losing your mother will never be able to, like, you'll never be able to understand it. You'll never be able to like let go of that feeling. Yeah. I don't know if, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm just like talking, but I appreciate anyone who's listening. It makes me feel good to be able to talk about her, you know, and just try to carry on her legacy. It makes me feel so good when people say, oh, you look exactly like your mom, you know, like that makes me feel good because like she's inside of me and she will always be inside of me. So thank you for listening, and yeah, bye.